This is Off the 11th Hour, and I'm your host, Nathanael Stone, but we all know who the Lord of Hosts is. Say it with me in any dialect you so choose. Yahweh Sabaoth. Kodesh brothers and sisters, fellow members in the body of Messiah, and those in the world, thank you for giving me your attention in a world full of distractions. We're going to have another episode here of Torah Tuesday. Nathan again is with us. We'll say hello.
Hello, everyone. I'm back for another episode. Yeah.
So we're again getting into deprogramming. It's a spirit-led program that we're going to be getting into. Just a quick recap. We covered last week on the word Christian that there really is kind of like almost like two meanings. There's a meaning it's supposed to be, and then there's the meaning that it is. Those that follow Christ, or people that are following an institutionalization of religiosity. We looked at like 1 Corinthians chapter 1 in the beginning there of some people we're divided. Oh, I'm of Peter, or I'm of Paul, or I'm of Apollo, or I'm of Messiah. And Paul is reprimanding them in saying that is the body of Messiah divided? Did Apollo or Peter or Kepha die on the cross for you? So I took that and applied that that terminology is basically saying that that people today, we're not baptized in the name of whatever denomination of religion that we're in. We're not baptized in the name of, I'll pick on Judaism, right? We're not baptized in the name of Islam, not baptized in Jehovah's Witnesses or Roman Catholic or Protestantism. We're not baptized in any of these names. We're baptized in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, or Jesus Christ, in the common tongue that is there. And then we got into the key point at the very end. We were looking at Matthew chapter 5 verse 17. And in Matthew chapter 5 verse 17, we were talking about that he didn't come to do away with the law, but to fulfill. And we looked at that word fulfill, plaru, which is also in Romans 15:19, which can mean fully preach. And so he didn't come to do away with, but to fulfill. And we looked at it in the single verse in context. So what is he saying? I come not to destroy the law and the prophets, but to end them? That doesn't make sense. To fulfill is in end, and the law is done away with. So even within the same verse, it doesn't make any sense. And then we looked at the two verses afterwards, verse 18 and 19, talking about not one jot or a tittle, even the smallest part of the law, is to be done away with as long as heaven and earth is here. And then in verse 19, it talks about those that break the least commands are considered least in the kingdom. But those who teach and do are considered great. So we look at the context. If he's saying that the law is fulfilled, as many people try to say in the use verse 17 inappropriately, but if we are to apply that the law has been fulfilled, done away with, as verse 17 says, then why in verse 19 does he talk about that those who break the least of the commands are considered least? So if they've been done away with, fulfilled, then the argument doesn't hold water. So we looked at that, and we're going to pick up from here. So is there anything that you want to talk about before we move forward?
I do want to just mention the fact that I think this can also pretty much apply to basically modern day Christianity. There are just many forms of it in itself that they kind of, especially with a lot of churches nowadays, they kind of tend to focus more on religiosity and what they want and what you have to do for them rather than what Christ actually wants for you. So I think it is an important factor, and it's very important to distinguish what Christ wants versus what the church wants. So
yeah. That's great. So with that, we'll segue forward. I was actually going to start in a different location, but when you said that, it reminded me of a scripture. Right, that's kind of how iron sharpening iron works. So here we have, I use ISR, Institute for Scriptural Research, and I'll explain some more on that later in this episode. the reason why I like ISR, one of the main reasons is they do what people would call a true name replacement. So as you see here, what I'm highlighting here, this portion right here, that's not English. that's those are Hebrew letters, right? Yod, Hey, Wah, Shin, Ayin. Some would say Vav. The middle letter there. It's a dialect dispute. We can talk about it another point in time. But these 5 letters here. The ISR at the preface of the book, if you have a hard copy, which I have just right up there, but ISR in the preface, it talks about that they don't want to get into the name pronunciation debate. They're like, what we're going to do is we're going to put the letters in Hebrew, and you can pronounce it however you want to pronounce it. So they do the same thing with the father's name, 𝐤𝐄𝐄𝐄, or 𝐤𝐄𝐿𝐿. They're like, go ahead and pronounce his name however you want to pronounce his name, but we're going to put his name in the original characters as they're supposed to do. They also did that with other words, like here, this word Elohim, you can see that I have. That is where the English equivalent is God. They put the word Elohim, we can talk about another point in time, but the word God etymology actually has some corruption in it, so they didn't want to put that in there. Similar also with other people's names. I'm trying to find someone's name that is in here that is other than that. So like Peter is Kepha, John is Yahuchanan, and Matthew is Matityahu, Isaiah Yeshayahu. They're doing the person's actual name as the best they could with the dialect that they are using English characters. I like that about the translation. Another reason is a lot of people might not know that our English language has been doctored. I'd say since the late 1500s, early 1600s is when it really started going through a major change, and they incorporated a lot of pagan words in our English tongue. Words like faith, which is a daughter of Zeus. The word faith is a daughter of Zeus. The word amunah in Hebrew is the word in Hebrew. And again, not to get hung up on minutia like that, but ISR they removed a lot of words that had pagan connection in with them, and then just put like the meaning of the word. Faith is belief, or mercy is I believe they put the word favor there, and things of that nature. So it can be a little bit of a learning curve to first start reading it, but I do find that I like the translation. But aside from that, I do like a lot of the wording in the translation that they use. However, I like ESV, English Standard Version, or King James. All Bibles are gold, just different qualities of gold. And and I can pick apart the ISR problems that I have with the ISR, but that's a separate point. So just going to put that, I use the ISR here. This is his name that we have here in Hebrew, and then you can just kind of read that how you want that. But here, this is the book of 1 John chapter 2 of verse 3. And by this we know that we know him, if we guard his commands. The one who says, I know him, and does not guard his commands is a liar, and the truth is not in him. The one who says, I know him, I just read that, but whoever guards his word, truly the love of Elohim, the love of God, has been perfected in him. By this we know that we are in him. The one who says he stays in him ought himself also to walk, even as he walked. So, you're talking about the word Christian, what the word Christian is supposed to mean, a follower of Christ. I'd say that the whole thing of what you said can be summed up in this verse. The one who says he stays in him ought himself also to walk, even as he walked. Do you see any insight on that before I maybe break that down? If not, it's okay. I'll
Yeah, please.
Okay, so what I see here is, I was going to go off on a tangent. I'm not going. I'm going to get back on the point. What I see here is this is present tense. We ought to walk, us now, present tense, even as he walked, him, then past tense. So I see that the walk isn't changed. And a problem that I have with a lot of Christian teachings is I'm going to kind of, I'll kind of like play both sides here. So you say like Jesus is perfect, and they'll be like, yeah, Jesus is perfect. And Jesus lived and died perfectly. Yes, he lived and died perfectly. Okay, and so it says that we're supposed to walk as he walked. Yes, walk as he walked. So I'm supposed to walk as Christ walked. Yes, walk as Christ walked. And then I say, but he walked in the law. And then they'll be like, oh, well, the law's been done away with, so you don't have to do that anymore. So what you're telling me in your religious institution is to walk as he walked, except in applications of the law, because those steps have been done away with. So what you're telling me is to walk as he walked, but don't walk as he walked. That's kind of the problem that I see here. And then when you put this whole thing in context, it says that we need to guard his commands. So if you were an enemy, or if you think like wise as serpents, right, gentle as doves. So if you're to think with like if someone was a serpent, how would they try to pervert this? Well, the thing that they would try to pervert is the scriptures say that if we guard his commands. So the easiest thing to do is to pervert his commands. So say, well, he didn't actually command this or command that, and by doing so, you would blur the line of what is right and what is wrong. And I think I talked about this before. I think I've asked this to you before. I don't know if we did it recording, but I'll do it again. Maybe. And so if you know the answer, feel free and give the answer. What is the definition of sin?
It is law.
Breaking it.
Breaking law.
Right.
Breaking the law. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually in the next chapter, verse 4. Everyone doing sin also does lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. And a problem that I have with a lot of the Christian institutions, people that are basically saying, I am of Paul, I am of Apollo, I am of Peter, I am of Mormonism, I'm of, Lutheranism, all the different denominations. The problem that they all tend to have the same issue is that they distort his commands. And so they try to pervert his commands. A lot of times when I bring up this verse in particular, this section in particular, they'll go to verse 7, and then you'll go, oh, no fresh command, right? The command is, here it is, at verse 8. I write you a fresh command. It says, the one who loves his brother stays in the light, and there is no stumbling block in him, right? And talking about, loving your brother. And things of that nature. But right here in verse 7, it says, I write no fresh command to you. So what's interesting is in the New Testament, this is the Apostle John here, first epistle of John. And he's saying that he writes no fresh command to you. So what does that mean? He says, guard his commands is not a fresh command. It's not a quote unquote New Testament commandment. Yeah. He says it is an old command, but an old command which you had from the beginning. Well, what is the beginning of the commands that man is given? A major point is when were the commands? When was the law given?
Since from the beginning. You heard it from the very beginning.
Mount Sinai, on Shavuot and Pentecost, and the law was given. And this was given like in fullness. There are some shadow types and pictures. Abraham, guarded commands, but Moses was given like the fullness of that law on Mount Sinai, approximately 3,500 years ago today. And so the old command, which you heard from the beginning, these are the commands on Mount Sinai. And so he said that he gives no fresh command, and it says that we need to guard. Anyone who does not guard his commands is a liar, and the truth is not in him. And this is the same terminology. Let's look this up here. Verse 4, we have commandments. This is the word for commandment. Entole, G1785 is a commandment or a precept. I'm curious. We're going to come back here. I'm curious to what Matthew 5 19 uses, it's the same word.
Same word.
It's the same word. Where it says, whoever then breaks one of the least of these commands and teaches men, so shall be called least in the kingdom of heavens. So this has to do with, so that these commands are definitely in connection with the Torah and the prophets. The thing that he didn't come to destroy, but to fully preach, to complete, to bring into fullness that is there. So going back to where we were at, these commands, and these commands as we have here, is contextually an old commandment that is the word which you heard from the beginning. And these old commands which we had from the beginning. And it's connected with the law and the prophets. So we have here that if we do not guard his commands, that anyone who says that they know him and does not guard is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever guards his word, so guarding, it's not just hearing, it's also doing, right? So it's a twofold thing. It's a hearing and doing. And anyone who is doing this, we know that the love of Elohim has been perfected. And then right after that, it says that we need to walk even as he walked. So we need to be applying the same statutes and precepts even as he walked. Now, everyone likes to jump to animal sacrifices. I have a whole teaching on that. Don't want to get into that right now, but factoring out animal sacrifices, because this is what the book of Hebrews gives indication about some matters. Factoring out animal sacrifices, there really is no difference in the law then and now. There's even the top 10. Let's actually go there. I have a memorized, but we have a screen here, so we can go right to the location. That's good. That's actually going to segue in. I was considering which one I wanted to go with after this, and now I kind of know which direction because we're here, so I know how we're going to end it. It's going to be actually a really interesting second half. We're going to be connecting with the mark of the beast. Do you know the mark of the beast?
666.
Yeah, that's the number, right? But I'm gonna give some insight to you, and I'm gonna connect that in because we're talking about commandments, and I was considering whether or not I should do. I have a fullness on the teaching, but I can really summarize it and go short here. Indeed. But here we have in Exodus chapter 20. Verse 1, right? Elohim spoke all these words. So it's not Moses speaking. Elohim is speaking right to the people. And at the end of this chapter, at the end of this portion here, the people said to Moses, "You speak with us and we hear, but let not Elohim speak with us lest we die." So these are I would say they should be red lettering. See, it's not red lettering. They should be red lettering because this is not letters that is, it's a higher, scriptures have different grades and magnitudes and weight to it. And things that are directly spoken by the Father or His only begotten Son, they have a lot heavier impact than that of a prophet or that of like historical accounts. And I'm not disregarding like something in the Kings or something like that. But if it's coming directly from the Master's mouth, it should have a heavier weight to it. Yeah, so indeed. This is about as heavy as they get, the words here in the scriptures. He first starts out in verse 2 and he defines who he is. I am Yahuwah your Elohim, the Lord your God, right? Who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery. You have no other mighty ones against my face. And interestingly enough, this is actually one of the issues I have with the ISR translation. Yeah. The one right here, they have mighty ones. That actually, the word there is Elohim. I can show you here real quick. You see 430, that's the word Elohim that is there. Yeah. ISR changed false gods with the word mighty ones, but it's actually Elohim, but it's contextual that it's talking about false Elohim, false gods.
False gods.
But regardless, yeah. So, like I said,
no other Elohims. Yes.
Yeah, no other false gods, against my face. So that's the first commandment. Yeah. You do not make yourself a carved image or any likeness of that which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth. You do not bow down to them nor serve them. For I, Yahuwah, your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the crookedness of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing loving commitments to thousands to those who love me and guard my commands. There is the second commandment. You do not bring the name of Yahuwah, your Elohim, to naught, in vanity, for Yahuwah does not leave the one unpunished who brings his name to naught. That's the third commandment. Here's the fourth commandment. Zakar Shabbat, or remember the Sabbath day to set it apart, keep it holy. 6 days you labor, and you shall do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath of Yahuwah, your Elohim. You do not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days, Yahuwah, there's his name, made, there's his title, the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them. There's his jurisdiction, his name, title, and jurisdiction, his seal of authority, kind of like President Joe Biden, United States of America, right? President is his title, Joe Biden is his name, President of America is his jurisdiction. I know there's always, there's always some conspiracy on it, but, Vladimir Putin is his name, president for life is his title, Russia Federation is his jurisdiction. So in the Sabbath here, we have his name, title, and jurisdiction. His seal of authority is in the Sabbath here. And rest of the seventh day, therefore, Yahuwah bless the seventh day and set it apart. Bless the Sabbath, the Shabbat day, and set it apart. There's the fourth commandment. Respect your father and mother so that your days are prolonged upon the soil which Yahuwah, your Elohim, is giving you. There's the fifth commandment. You do not murder. 6, you do not commit adultery. 7, you do not steal. 8, you do not bear false witness against your neighbor. 9, you do not covet your neighbor's house, and you do not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, or whatever belongs to your neighbor. There's the 10th commandment. These 10 commandments are spoken by the Father himself, right from Mount Sinai. Spoken, through a messenger, as some would say. It's a whole other teaching. Don't want to get into that. But here we have, does coveting your neighbor's things, did that change? Bearing false witness against your neighbor, lying, has that changed? Do not steal. Has that changed? Is it okay to do this now? Do not commit adultery. It's okay to do that? Do not murder. It's okay to do that? No. Respect your mother and father. It's okay. It's okay not to do that. To bring his name in vain is okay to do that. To bow down to idols, carved images, okay to do that. Have other Elohim that you worship, other false gods, other gods that you're worshiping against his face. It's okay to do that. So why is it? Do they say it's okay to disregard the Sabbath? It's a 1,703-year-old, it's a little longer than that, but since it was implemented in the mainstream, 1,703 years, the sabbatical edict of Constantine. Yeah. We're going to get into that probably next week. But why do they try to say that this day has changed?
Well, obviously it's they want to fit their own kind of agenda. They pick and choose what they want to follow. They just pick and choose. They're really picky. The one thing I have no idea why these guys really just go like, oh yeah, this, you see this here? Nah, we take it out of the equation here. Yeah. See, let's take this out. No, the rest, okay. Yeah, it's really good that you're putting this into perspective, how pick and choosy a lot of churches are nowadays.
Yeah, on that, since we're basically in like a deprogramming, and also like a foundational, we're in a foundational inspection, and I have so many different directions to go in, or let me rephrase, I have so many different structures to inspect and to either point out flaws in our structure so that we can repair them, and so it's kind of difficult which direction to go in. But what I would say before I go in these directions is, what is essentially, and maybe, there's one answer that I'm looking for. Maybe there's more than one answer, but there's one particular I'm looking for, but there probably is more than one right answer. a religion, what is, what are Catholics or Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons or Protestants or, any denomination, or even Judaism or Islam, Muslim, they're all claiming to worship the Elohim, the God of Jacob, or I should not say Jacob, I should say Abraham. Muslims don't claim to be through Jacob, but they do say through Abraham. They claim to be through Abraham, but what are all the different religions, the Abrahamic religions, each one individually, what is it really that they're saying? Like brand authority, like what are the brands, the different brands? What is each brand essentially saying?
They're essentially saying I am, yeah, there's a lot of different answers that you can put here, but they're all saying that they follow,
you're right. You keep going. You're right. That's it.
Elohim. Yeah, they follow Elohim.
Correct. Yeah. That's the answer. I'll kind of expand upon that. They're all saying that they know what makes the Creator happy.
Yeah.
And they know if you follow us, you are pleasing to the Creator. And if you do things the way that we teach you, the Creator will be pleased in your actions. And therefore, we know that we aren't saved by works. Even some religions might teach that.
Yeah.
But the scriptures do say that we are judged according to our works. Mm-hmm. And Messiah says that verbatim, like red lettering stuff. He says this in a number of locations, especially at the end in Revelation 22, I think 15 or somewhere around there. He says that, he's going to come back and judge everyone according to their works. So we know that we're judged by our works, and those that are judged by our works, we know that we're going to be held accountable to them. Therefore, if you're not doing bad works, you're doing good works that are pleasing to the Father, maybe he'll forgive us completely and bring us into everlasting life. That's essentially kind of what it's saying. They're all teaching something to that degree.
Yeah.
And so that's essentially what a religion is saying.
Yeah.
And so Satan, being a serpent, twisting, he likes to distort things, and in distorting things, he doesn't necessarily need you to worship him. He just needs you to not worship the Creator. Mm. And that's really, and he just really needs to corrupt things.
Yeah.
And if he can get someone's perception of sin to be corrupted, people can be walking in sin, thinking they're walking in righteousness.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And this is kind of what the mission in the end days is all about. And there's a lot of scripture talking about restoration and purification and things happening. But I would just say that these 10 commandments, at the very least, because this is what starts the whole thing off.
Yeah.
Elohim speaks this. And then at the very end, they're like, please, Moses, you be the intercessor between us. Don't let Elohim speak to us anymore. Let we may die. And then from there, Yahuwah is talking to Moses, and then everything from there, and then you'll see Moses speaking, and then Moses will say, let me try to find one here real quick. I'm just gonna here. And Yahuwah spoke to Moses, saying, and then Moses will repeat it. A lot of times, a prophet will say something like, "Thus said Yahuwah," and then a prophet will repeat something, in letting you know that it was Yahuwah who was speaking. And Moses is doing that. I couldn't find an exact example here, but I think there's a lot in Deuteronomy. But it's okay. So when we have back to where we were looking at in 1 John 2. And it says here that that by this we know that we know him if we guard his commands, and then that we need to walk even as he walked. I think it's safe to say, at the very least, because you don't need to do an animal sacrifice for not stealing, right? I mean, maybe if you do steal, there's a sin offering, but to guard these commands, factoring out animal sacrifices, I think that these are all things I think that even worldly people would agree. Yeah, murder's wrong, right?
Yeah,
or stealing from other people is wrong.
Is wrong,
right? And why is it the Sabbath is something that they kind of pick on? But I'm going to move forward here. I'm going to get into something on this, on the mark of the beast. I have deeper teachings on this. I'm going to quickly run through something here real quick. In Daniel chapter 7, there are 4 beasts. I have them highlighted here on the screen. There's the lion, the bear, the leopard, and then this 4th beast, which devoured, crushed, and trampled down the rest. So that means that some scriptures will say, broke in pieces. So it breaks in pieces or rips to pieces, tramples as in crushes, right? And then devoured as in it consumes it and then it embodies it. So in this 4th beast, you will see aspects of the leopard, the bear, and the lion. Now, a beast is a kingdom. We're given the definition of that in this chapter right here in verse 17. It says, these great beasts, which are 4 kings which rise up from the earth. I'm not going to get into the answer. I'm not going to get into the math behind the answer, but I will give you the answers to them. This lion is Babylon. This bear is Medo-Persia. This leopard is Greece. And then the 4th beast is Roman kingdom. That Roman kingdom, and there's a lot more on here. I'm just going to quickly show you the lion, the bear, and the leopard, and then this 4th beast, which rips the rest into pieces. When you come here into Revelation chapter 13, verse 1, and it talks about a beast coming up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And then here in verse 2, it says it was like a leopard, feet like the feet of a bear, mouth like the mouth of a lion. There's the leopard, the bear, the lion. Because the 4th beast devoured them, and then we see certain characteristics of the other 3 beasts inside the 4th beast. The 4th beast is an amalgamating kingdom. This beast right here, the one coming up out of the sea, gets his authority from the dragon. And the dragon, Satan, gives this kingdom its authority. Now, down in the same chapter, we see another beast coming up out of the earth, and it exercises all the authority of the first beast. And then this other beast is the one that does great signs to come down, and it causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be given a mark upon their right hand or upon their foreheads. This is that, mark of the beast, that no one should be able to buy or sell except he that have the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is the wisdom. He who has understanding, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So that is that mark that is right there, that mark of that beast. Now we see this in the next chapter, chapter 14. I have more teachings on this. I'm not gonna get into it in depth. Verses 1 through 5 are the characteristics of the 144,000. Verse 6 and 7 is the mission statement and warning of the 144,000. And then verse 8 is what happens, that they were part of their mission work was in proclaiming of Babylon the Great is fallen. And then right after that, you have this third angel following them, third messenger, Malach in Hebrew. It says, if anyone worships the beast, right? The previous chapter talks about the beast and his image and receives his mark upon his forehead or his hand. Well, that earth beast in Revelation 13:11 is telling everyone to worship the first beast, which was before it. That's the one in Revelation 13:1 and 2. So worships the beast and his image and receives the mark on his forehead or on his hand. And then it talks about what's going to happen, right? Torture goes up forever and ever, no rest day or night. And then in verse 12, and this is kind of bringing us back to the commands, it says, here's the endurance of the kedoshim, set apart ones, holy ones. Here are those guarding the commands of Elohim and this is the word faith, amunah, belief of Yahushua, Jesus. So right after mentioning this mark of the beast that has now come upon the world, right after Babylon the Great is fallen, just after the mission statement and warning of the 144,000, telling them to fear Elohim because the judgment has come, fear and give glory to him, give him the worship, the esteem. This is their warning and their mission statement of what they're doing. Right after that, we see Babylon the Great falling, and then this mark of the beast coming upon the world. And then right after that, we have a call to commands, the commands of Elohim and the faith of Messiah. So we have those guarding. Now that right there, those guarding the commands of Elohim, this is the exact same portion, similar portion to what we saw in 1 John 2, talking about guarding his commands, right? Those who do not guard his commands is a liar, but whoever is guarding it, right, the love has been perfected. And that these commands are the old command. This is the word that we heard from the beginning. And I just showed you the beginning in Exodus chapter 20.
Yeah.
So coming back to Revelation 14, we have this mark of the beast in this order. They worship the beast, his image, the mark. They receive the mark on the forehead or the hand. Now, here in Revelation 20, we see this, but in the opposite pattern. These are those who did not worship, right? They did not worship the beast, nor his image, and did not receive his mark upon their foreheads or upon their hands, and they lived and reigned with Messiah for 1,000 years. This is those that are the thrones, and they sat on them. Judgment was given to them. This is that first resurrection. Blessed and set apart is the one having part in the first resurrection. The second death possesses no authority over these, but they shall be priests of Elohim and of Messiah, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. What's interesting, that they are priests of Elohim and of Messiah, and that they reign, they're ruling priests. That is actually what the term, this is Hebrews now, what the term Melchizedek, and if we look that up really quickly, the term, it means, let's see if it breaks it down here. See, it's a king of righteousness. A king of righteousness. Okay. So Melech in Hebrew is king. Then Zedek is Zedek. That should be a T there. But it's okay. TZ or TS. Zedek, king of righteousness. So what it is essentially is it's a righteous king who is also a priest. And so we see here, and it talks about the order of Melchizedek, meaning that if there's a high priest of Melchizedek, and that they're supposed to be priests to be a high priest. And if there's a, like, for instance, here in Revelation, talking about King of Kings, so if there's a King of Kings, that means that his kingdom is a kingdom of kings, and he is the King of Kings. We're called to be kings, and a master of masters. We're called to be Adonai, not in like the capital A, but we are called to be masters, and he is the master of masters. That's what that term means. Otherwise he's just the master. Right? He's the master of masters and the King of kings, and he is the high priest. So we are called to be a kingdom of priests and kings. And getting that back to the point of commands, is that a king knows the law and a priest knows how to apply the worship. So we're supposed to know the law and how to pass judgment and right ruling. And we're also supposed to know the who, what, where, when, why worship is done in the priestly sense of how and what exactly is a sacrifice. And let me kind of there's something in here in Revelation. Let me find it. I don't remember exactly where it's at. It talks about kings and priests here in Revelation 4, chapter 1. I was trying to remember where it's at, and I'm not sure if I can't find it. Help me find it if you see like a king or priest.
King, priest. Yeah, I'm trying to.
I thought it was kind of up towards the beginning, but here it is, right here, verse 6. 6 was popping up in my head.
Priest.
Yeah,
okay,
he made us kings and priests.
Yeah.
To his Elohim and Father, to be in esteem and rule forever and ever. Now. Yeah, this is who he is talking about, and all of those in the first resurrection partake in this. It's not just some people try to say it's only 144,000. It's not only that.
Yeah.
But that is there. So getting that back into the point where we're at, we see that this group of people in the first resurrection, they did not worship the beast, his image, receive his mark on their foreheads or upon their hands. Now, I'd ask you, what is, we talking about the commands, we talking about the 10 commandments. See if you know, what is the greatest commandment? The first and greatest commandment.
Okay, it was worship him and him alone. Worship Elohim and Elohim alone.
That's the first commandment.
Yeah.
Yes, but what is the greatest commandment? That's the first of the 10. It's a separate commandment. It's not of the 10.
Okay.
It's separate. Do you know what the first and greatest commandment? You probably know what it is. I gotta be on the spot. So
it's to be, yes, it's saved by the Messiah. Except the Messiah. Yeah.
Right here, we're given the answer. One learned in the Torah, learned in the law, in the inspired writings, comes to him and they say, "Teacher, what is the great command?" Some translation, some other location will say the greatest, but what is the great command? Like the greatest.
Yeah.
What is the great command in the law? And Yahushua said to them, "You shall love Yahuwah, your Elohim, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all," this is the word soul here, "with all your soul and with all your mind." This is the first and great command.
Yeah.
And the second is like it, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." And then it says here in verse 40, "On these two commands hang all the Torah and the prophets." So it doesn't say that on these two commands, that's all you have to do and don't have to do anything else. It says that everything else is connected to these two commands. So the two greatest commandments, everything else connects into that. And I'm going to connect the two greatest commandments into the 10 commandments that we just read. So here we have now, and these are Old Testament stuff, by the way. Right here, to love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart, soul, and mind.
Yeah.
We see this in Deuteronomy chapter 6, and it says here, "Shema o Yasharal, Yahuwah Elohim, Yahuwah Echad. Hear Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love Yahuwah your Elohim, the Lord your God, with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart." So right here, he says that this portion right here is the first and greatest commandment. And then he says the second one, "Love your neighbor like yourself." It's similar to it, is what he says. That also is an Old Testament commandment. That is found in Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18. Talks about, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." I'm doing a teaching at Sukkot on this this month now, and at Wowoka, and it's all about love and forgiveness unconditional, and it's a breakdown of the second commandment, but it has to do with don't hate your brother in your heart, reprove your neighbor, so you do need to correct someone if they're doing something wrong, because that is actually what love is, not bear a sin because of them, but you are to love your neighbor as yourself. So this right here, love your neighbor as yourself, we also see this in connection again in another location in Mark chapter 12. I think it starts in 28. Yeah, 28. Says, which is the first commandment of all? Like a scribe. It said one of the scribes. I was going to say the word scribe in Matthew, but it didn't say the word scribe in Matthew. But here's the word in Mark. This is the same event. A scribe, and I actually identify. I didn't quite know the meaning of the word, but I identify as a scribe. And a scribe can be good or bad. A lot of times in the New Testament, they're bad, but it does say that Messiah sent scribes in Matthew chapter 23, verse 34. Says that he sent scribes, and then they, killed them or persecuted them, and hunted them down from city to city, flogging them. But scribes can be good or bad. But what a scribe is the term grammatical, someone that is like analyzing the grammar. That's kind of the easiest way to put it. Someone that looks at the writings and they analyze the writing on an in-depth level. And they say here in Thayer, a definition of the second portion here, it says that they are learned in the Mosaic Law. I would now say that they're learned in all of the inspired writings, or should be. And that scribes examine the more difficult and subtle questions of the law, and that they gave various kinds of thought to elucidate meaning and scope. And now it says here that they did this to the detriment of religion. I would say that the wrong ones did it to the detriment of religion. Those that are sent by Messiah did it to the benefit of teaching how the scriptures are to be interpreted. And that's what it says here, that they are skilled men that are needed in the examination, in the causes and solution of difficult questions, in interpretations, in grammatical aspect of the scriptures. Someone, and I've told you before, I do identify as being in the position of teacher. I don't know every topic perfectly, but I try to talk in areas that I have been studied in. And now understanding the word scribe, I identify as this. So this scribe, put that in context, who he is, he's someone that is, he analyzes the nitty-gritty of the scriptures, and he's asking Messiah, what is the first command of all? And then he tells him right here, Shema, O Yasharal, Yahuwah Elohim, Yahuwah Echad, right? The Lord our God, the Lord is one. Hear Israel. And that word hear is listen and do. It's not just hear, it's Shema, it's listen and do. So it says right here that you shall love him with all your heart, with all your soul, nefesh in Hebrew, with all your yatzar, mind, and with all your strength. This is the first command. And the second like it is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Wow. There is no other command greater than these. Now, the 10 commandments are 10 great words. 10 great commandments, for sure, but above the 10 commandments are these. So I'm going to share with you, we're kind of getting a little bit out of time here. I'm going to share here how the mark of the beast is in connection with this. So we have heart, soul, mind, and then strength. Now, in with the mark of the beast, we have the aspect in the same order. We have beast, image, forehead, and hands, and it's the same order in with Revelation 14. It's beast, image, forehead, hand. So we have heart, soul, mind, and strength. Now, I'm going to connect those that, I don't want to go into verse 14. We're going into chapter 14. We'll go from chapter 20, because we want to be the people who did not worship the beast, not those who did. So those who did not worship the beast, love him with all their, remember, heart, soul, mind, strength. Love him with all their heart. So they did not worship the beast because they love him with all their heart, because the first commandment is not to have any false gods. So the beast claims to be God, and it says it right here in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Right here, he says that he sits as Elohim in the temple of Elohim, showing himself that he is Elohim. He is God. He claims that he is God. Yeah. Showing himself that he is God.
Elohim.
Right. So he sits as that, though he is, though he's not, he's false, but as though he is. And then also, if you connect here with Revelation 13, it talks about how all the earth marveled after the beast. This is that first beast. Remember Revelation 13, the beast coming up out of the sea. And it says here that all those dwelling on the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life of the slain lamb. This is first resurrection, Revelation 20 verse 4 stuff that we just covered. But everybody else from the foundation of the world shall worship him. So they worship him, and then he claims to be Elohim. So those that did not worship the beast, they love him with all their heart, because the first commandment is not to have any other Elohim but Yahuwah. So the first aspect of the mark of the beast, not worshiping the beast, if you remembered the first commandment and love him with all your heart, you're not going to worship the beast. Now, the second aspect of the mark of the beast is they didn't that they did not worship its image, heart, soul. They love him with all their soul. And I have a deeper teaching, so I'm kind of cutting some of the fat off this, I guess you would say, to move quickly. Those that did not worship the image of the beast did not. They loved Yahuwah with all their soul, because they remembered the second commandment, not to make this carved image bow down and serve them or worship them, because they worship the image of the beast. Those that did worship the beast, those that did not worship the beast, did not worship the image of the beast. They love him with all their soul, because they remember that second commandment, not to make a carved image, bow down and worship it. So we have the first aspect of the mark of the beast, that they did not worship the beast because they love him with all their heart, because they remember the first commandment. It's in the same order. The beast that claims to be God. The second one, the image of they did not worship the image of the beast, and the second commandment says not to worship his image. So if the third commandment is not to bring his name into vanity, then it would have to have something to do with his name, the third aspect of the mark of the beast. So it said that they did not receive the mark on their foreheads. Why didn't they receive the mark on their foreheads? Because in Revelation 14:1, that his Father's name is written upon the foreheads of the 144,000. We also see that the servants are sealed upon their foreheads. And then we also see in Revelation 22 that everybody now, not just the 144,000, have the Father's name upon their forehead. And there's a prophetic teaching in Ezekiel. Let me try to find Ezekiel here. In Ezekiel chapter 9, it talks about pass into the midst of the city and put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and cry over all the abominations that are done within it, but then kill to destruction everyone who does not have that mark. Anyone that does not have the mark, kill to destruction. It says, do not come near anyone upon whom is the mark, but kill to destruction everybody else. So having a mark on the forehead is not a bad thing, as long as it's the Father's mark. There's two marks. There's the mark of the devil, and there's the mark of the Father, the mark of Elohim's mark upon our forehead. We also see another mark that's popping in my memory here in Revelation chapter 9. I think it's 6 or 5.
5. Or no.
Wait, here 4. Okay. It says here, do not harm
the grass of the earth,
but only those men who do not have the seal of Elohim upon their foreheads. So there it is again.
Yeah.
So making that connection in Revelation, they did not receive the beast mark upon their forehead. Why? Because the Father's mark is upon their forehead. And that Father's mark upon our forehead, it says that it is his name that is upon their forehead. And the reason why his name that they didn't have that beast mark upon their forehead is they remembered the third commandment, is not to have the name of Yahuwah your Elohim to naught. Don't take his name in vain. And according, as we covered in Revelation 22:5, that his name is upon their forehead. So therefore, the name of Yahuwah is supposed to be upon our forehead, on our mind, essentially, is what it is. Yeah. So they didn't have the mark. Yeah. So remember, it's heart. They love him with all their heart. That's the first commandment. Love them with all their soul, connected with the third commandment, or the second commandment, and then love them with all their mind, which is that third commandment. And that mind is in connection with the name, which is upon the forehead. It's all integrated. Yeah. Really, really simple. So this one right here, remember the Sabbath day. This word remember is zakar, and it can mean to mark. Here it is. Properly to mark.
Oh, I see.
Properly to mark. Right there, that is highlighted. Yeah, in here. Properly to mark. So it says to mark the Sabbath day, and set it apart, and then you do all your work. So in connection where we're at, heart, soul, mind, strength, do all your work. You love them with all your. So it's heart, love them with no false God worship, love them with all your heart, no false images, love them with all your soul, love them with all your mind is not to take his name in vanity, and then to mark the Sabbath, to remember the Sabbath, has to do with love them with all your strength, because that's the day that 6 days you do work, and then the seventh day is the day that you rest, which you rest your hands, so to speak. So that fourth aspect of the beast is that they don't have the mark of the beast on their hands. So what we saw, we're about out of time here. Yeah, we got a couple minutes left. What we saw is that what the mark of the beast is doing is that the mark of the beast specifically targets the first 4 of the 10 commandments. And the first 4 of the 10 commandments are in connection with the first and greatest commandment. Love him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then the second one, which is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And it starts here. This is the 5th commandment. Respect your mother and father. They're your first neighbors. Do not murder. That's about your neighbor. Don't commit adultery. Your neighbor. Don't steal your neighbor. Don't bear false witness. That's against your neighbor. It literally even says your neighbor here. Yeah, and do not covet your neighbor's house with your neighbor. So the last 6 of the 10 commandments are to love your neighbor as yourself. That's the second greatest commandment is the last 6 of the greatest commandment of the second greatest commandment, and then the first greatest commandment is the first 4 of the 10 commandments. You could argue that this one here, respect your mother and father, is kind of a gateway. Heavenly Father, Heavenly Mother, earthly mother, earthly father. There's a connection there, but regardless, your love your neighbor as yourself starts with this one. So the mark of the beast, if you want to know what it is that mark of the beast specifically targets the first and greatest commandment, which is in connection with the 10 commandments from there. So that's kind of what Satan was talking about with when he's perverting commandments and perverting the definition of sin, because people are not even doing the simplest format of guarding his commands. They don't even know those 12. We just covered 12 commandments, and a lot of people don't know the connection with that, and they don't know that the connection of that is with the mark of the beast. Yeah, so I'm done. If there's anything, I'm going to ask you. I normally do like a pearl, episode. If don't cast pearl before swine, I have a jar of pearls here. So I'm gonna ask you, what is the pearl? A very interesting thing or a key thing that you took away from this study. What was the pearl of the episode?
Okay. So for me, it would definitely have to be the main 3, the main commandments, the 2 important commandments that really have to take into account.
I myself, this is literally the first time I've ever heard this. I have not been taught this. Love Elohim with all your heart, your mind, and your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. I was literally just the whole thing was just. I was never taught that these are the 2 greatest commandments that you have to take into this whole account when it comes to really being a follower of Elohim,
Yeah.
which is very interesting, interesting perspective to kind of take away, and how everything kind of correlates. It all really just comes together perfectly, and the whole, the second half of the commandments is neighbor,
Yeah.
all neighbor.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, neighbor, and I always see that as a sign to really just don't break the law. Don't break the law, which is sin,
Yeah.
and love Elohim with all your mind, soul, and
Strength. Yeah. And heart too.
and
Don't
heart.
forget
Yeah, heart. Yeah, I can't forget heart. And your neighbors. Yeah, and it could be very hard for me to really just do the neighbor aspect of God's commandment, even though I know it's supposed to be the greatest commandment, to really just love your neighbor. But sometimes it can be very difficult. But this really brought into a new perspective that I really have to work on that. Yeah.
I have so much more to share, but we're over time,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to go over time on it. But we'll pick up next week.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
but yeah, it's I would just say that it's really disappointing.
Yeah.
That these religions are not teaching foundational aspects.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a foundational thing. You think that talking about foundational aspects of what is red lettering, what would be the first and second greatest commandment. Everybody should know that.
Yeah.
What are the 10 commandments in order?
Yeah.
These are things that, like, a 5-year-old can understand, can pick that up. A 5-year-old can pick that up.
Yeah.
Children should be taught this at a young age. And the fact that us as adults don't know this information, it really shows the neglect in instruction that we have had by these so-called religious leaders that are not properly tending the flock and doing their job.
Yeah.
They're incompetent. It's incompetent. It really portrays the incompetence of them. But with that, I'll say to guard your heart, guard your soul, guard Torah, or pay the toll.